Actually, no, I'm Bob. I'm the band director here at San Jacinto College South, and glad to see you all turn out here. I won't waste any. You need to check your schedules. This is microbiology class, and I am a teacher. Actually, no, I'm Bob. I'm the band director here at San Jacinto College South, and glad to see you all turn out here. I won't waste any time. You know who you're going to see, and to me, I think he's probably one of the most fantastic musicians that's ever lived, and certainly one of the most outstanding trumpet players that ever lived. Push the limits of the instruments so the rest of us have a hard time trying to play like him, but I'd like to introduce at this time one of my former bosses. I got to play with his band at one time. One of the greatest trumpet players in the world, Mr. Maynard Ferguson.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. One of the things that I really enjoy is when I put one of my former great lead trumpet players in an embarrassing position where he has to say all those nice things about me. Thank you, Bob, very much. Okay, and I'm going to try and cover as much as I can in regards to what I feel I can pass along that'll be helpful to the younger and some not so young players. And one of the things I think is most important is that when somebody stands up here and assumes the role of the clinician, terrible word, isn't it? Like we're at a clinic, you know, like there's something wrong with us. But or now they call it master class, and that feels too pompous. But what I think is important is that I deal with the things and talk about the things that work for me, the techniques that work for me. I think if we're going to discuss triple tonguing, we probably ought to go to a Maurice Andre clinic. And certainly I've gone through all those types of things and enjoyed them very, very much. Incidentally, I'm a big fan of his. But what I'm referring to is I will try to show you how I approach the instrument rather than trying to describe to you how somebody else does it. There are many different techniques and approaches to the instrument and to wind instruments in general. And there's not just one path. But there are certain basic things that we all have to follow. So at the very beginning here, I will deal with some beginners things that I've noticed that are very, very important because all the older players my age know that you know, you can develop a bad habit in a week or two, and it can take you a couple of years to get rid of it. You know, so better not to develop them right from the beginning. So I'll deal with some basic elementary things that are, however, just like in football when they talk about you know, the basic techniques always have to be there, regardless of how many stars you have in your team. Well, the same thing is true with the approach to the instrument. So I'd like to, just from having had the pleasure of hearing so many school bands, and of course I'm a big fan of music education and all that, so I've heard many of them, and there are certain things that I've noticed that I would like to point out because they are problems that pop up regularly. And as soon as I've done my little beginning rap, we can get into questions and answers, and I'll try to make up a few answers. Okay. All right, first thing I'd like to say is, let's dedicate everything to, of course, we just lost one of the great geniuses of this instrument, Dizzy Gillespie, and another great genius was Don Jacoby. And they both recently left us, so I'd just like to dedicate everything to them. And because they were not only great players, but great teachers, of course. Let's start with the first thing I want to talk about is the stance. And whereas everybody tends to say, yeah, I know that one, it'd be amazing then that the batting average is so low when I look at players of all ages who, if you remind them and say, let's see how you stand, they're perfect. You know, but if you just observe them at a practice session or a gig or a concert, they're doing it wrong and they don't even realize it, you know. And to get into it quickly, what I would like to, of course, is that you should be balanced like an athlete. Part of what we do is athletic. I know we're all very artsy, and amen, I'm an artist. You know, and okay, well, just remember that you're part athlete whether you want to be or not, and you have to be coordinated. And you know, it's obvious. You look at me and you say an athlete. You know, he's 28 pounds overweight. You know, but the point is the coordination that you use is where it really counts, which is not unlike many things in sports. Okay, so when we come to the stance. We're very often victims of album covers, you know, and promo photos, you know, and you know, it started with Louis Armstrong, and then of course, and then the Miles Davis things. And Miles always was lean and good-looking, a slim body and everything, and male models. You know, in other words, what I'm trying to say, the album covers and promo photos are the artistic work not of a musician, but of a photographer. So therefore, right? And that's, you see a lot of Miles Davis pictures like that, you know. And so that's just to get rid of that part of it. That's not the way to play this instrument, and a lot of instruments, really. So now let's get on to the, when we talk about the feet, that's real simple. You want to use your feet about the same way as a good weightlifter and the same way as a great opera singer when they're really doing their thing. Now, in casual moments, just like if you asked me to press this trumpet or something or lift it, it's no challenge, so I could even do it on one foot or leaning one way or the other. But as soon as there's a challenge, right, if you go to the weightlifting, just watch a guy that you know he knows or she knows what they're doing. And even their breathing is very important to them. All right, so, and there you go, that's it. You know, and another thing that's very funny about that is that most young children, if you give them a horn and you say, hey, let me see if you can get a sound out of this, naturally most of them will put their mouths over the mouthpiece, right? And no sound comes out, you know. And he said, no, blow it real hard, you know. And you won't learn this from the Arvin book, by the way. And when they do that, and you say blow real hard, just interesting that the little child, 9 out of 10, easily will go, right? And okay, but this part is perfect, right? It's this and it's Pavarotti. Right? Okay, and that's what you're looking for. You're looking for how to take all the work that's possible. I'm not a non-pressure guy, but you want to take a lot of that heat away from, this is the panicky people, your hands. They're the enemy. They're your false ego. I better make real sure everybody hears me playing perfectly great, right? So it's tone. I'm going to nail this, you know, and that's how you develop yourself as a 5-minute hero. You know, the first tune you sound dynamite, and it's downhill all the way as you become swollen, you know. And we're now speaking about basically stamina and range, of course, you know. Okay, so a lot of jokes trumpet players make around me about, what is it, let's see. Loud is best, fast is really good, and never sacrifice tone and intonation for volume. They're just kidding. believe me. Okay. Actually, I'm trying to teach exactly the opposite of that. When it comes to a lot of the things about the power game and the trumpet and the things like and the range, don't get hung up on that as your only thing. Make sure you pay attention to your teacher and your Arvin book and all the basics that you want to get in there first. And then it's up to you, because just like in choosing equipment and anything else, you're better off for your first equipment to be picked by a band director or personal teacher. But at one point, you're going to have to make all those decisions for yourself. Doesn't matter how many Maynards you listen to, how many clinics you come to. The greatest teacher is you yourself. And all right, so the feet are just planted normally, right? Feet pointed straight ahead. I have weird feet, so what do you call that? Feet point out. But anyway, that's me. But the point is, I'm balanced on my feet when I play. The other thing that is really important is, of course, the use of the body or the airstream. There is nothing superhuman about the strength of my lip. And that's almost something you should sort of get out of your computer, that how strong your lip is a joke. It's how well coordinated and how good in shape you are and how well you know how to control your airstream and the air passage right from when it comes out of your body through the mouth and into the horn. And once you think that way, then you want to say, when it comes to what systems you want to try, just pray to God that you find a most comfortable a system that has the fewest rules. Yeah, you don't want to think of a whole bunch of things. I had ambitions to be a really great golfer, and I read every book there was on it, and I have a beautiful swing, absolutely gorgeous, but most of the time I missed the ball. Okay, too many rules, the wrist, the back, don't forget to the pivot, boom, bit, keep your eye on, etc. Okay, well the same thing is true with learning an instrument. In the final essence, they don't say work the trumpet, they say play the trumpet. So you mustn't be too serious, because you have to handle missing. Big deal, and that's got to be your healthy mental attitude, right? You do the best you can, and then you laugh when you miss. Your band director won't be too turned on by that. Okay, so I've missed a million times, and so I've laughed a lot, yes. But the point is to remember, if us jazz musicians can cover it up better than the classical guys can. I meant it. It was a minor ninth, Okay, now we're going to talk about what a lot of you want to hear from me, and that is about the stamina and the range. And I haven't warmed up. That's old-fashioned, isn't it? No, it isn't. It's important. But I want to show you, first of all, that the double pivot is what I call it, just to keep it simple. One is the body, and one is the jaw. I say the jaw because I happen to have an overbite, yeah. And the overbite means, of course, is that my jaw is not too handsome back here someplace. So when I'm in the bottom register, I push the jaw out. For you that don't have an overbite, I just leave it alone in the lower register and then let it come back and bellow the horn down as you go into the upper register. That way, no thoughts of syllables, no thoughts about keeping the throat open. Very few things to think about. Very Eastern in its thinking, where we try to turn our minds on, and the people in the East practice turning their minds off. In other words, just play. It's the goal we want to reach. Really have fun and play. Okay. But thinking while you're playing is an interruption. In the in the bottom register, let me stand over here maybe, where there's no demand, just like the weightlifter or the singer, my knees are what you might call locked, meaning that they're not bent at all, because I have very little energy demand, correct, in the lower register. Okay, so therefore when I'm so I'm kind of like the guy that's been asked, you know, the great bodybuilder's been asked to lift the cover, so it doesn't really matter out of habit, and because you guys are here, I stood correctly. Chances are I might not when there's not much of an energy demand, although beware, because you can start a bad habit and then you keep standing that way, okay? All right, and now the first energy demand of the way I handle my body, before we talk about the jaw, which I talked about, but I want to show you how it works together. Okay, first thing that happens when I have an energy demand is, now we'll pretend it's now suddenly a forte, but not really that high. The first thing that goes is in your knees. Doing there is you're getting body power instead of using your hands, right? Right, and once again, I am not a non-pressure, that's the point of it. But when you see my face and neck blown up, and my neck goes up to about 23 now, the point is, and that's power and energy and air going that way. Not some sort of a pain thing because I'm jamming this thing into my face. Okay? All right. No, but, right. Okay, so now we're going to go with, and as that energy came, I was also going up a little, so the horn came down. One of the most useful things about this system is that I'm really great for recording. People love, engineers, recording engineers love me, because my horn is always pointed right there. Well, that's a double high C, that's pedal, doesn't matter. Eventually that's for the horn. It's me working the horn, okay? All right, so I'll try and lower register. Knees bent. All right, now, more jaw. And the horn's still there. Okay, that's enough of that. I'd like to make sure you all know that's not the way to warm up, okay? Normally I don't do that. Okay. The point is, there I had to play consciously. That's another part of the lesson. I wasn't warmed up, and yet I'm going to play a double high C. Then I do have to think just before I do it, because my body is saying, hey, you just woke up. What are you doing? You know, and in other words, I haven't warmed up. My body's not really ready. Certainly doesn't want to do that, right now. Okay, so that's why we warm up. And I advise anybody who's into any instrumental thing. I once said this only pertains to the wind instrument players, and I remember Peter Erskine, the drummer, putting his hand up and saying, "Bob, it's just the same with playing drums," and that is controlling your airstream. And because if you buy a book, and I recommend it to everybody, on Hatha Yoga, and just turn, if you're not into all that Eastern thing like I am, just turn to the breathing exercises, because they pertain more to what we do in life than it does to anything that we'll learn from any phys ed program as far as pertaining to playing the instruments. Okay, so they use words like prana and pranayama. And what we're talking about is the fact that we're playing at Rockefeller's tonight. If I'm going to miss, I'll miss on the opening tune. Maybe the second tune if I'm having a bad night. I probably won't miss at the end of the night because I'll be stronger. Because if you breathe correctly, and according to the Indian thing, correct breathing creates energy, right? Okay, so the more you breathe in and out, not only do you gain coordination, of course, but you actually gain strength, and that's why I'm stronger at the end of the concert, you know. Short concerts actually kind of are a little bit tricky for me, because then I have to get there real early and work out for a while, you know. And there's a lot of things in what we do, you know, I hate to warm up. I find it real boring, but I find it more boring to not warm up and play bad, you know. Okay. As you can tell, I'm not that really disciplined. I don't think so, anyway. All right. I'm going to try and cover things by keeping moving here. I play with a dry lip. And I do that because of just some innocence, or that's how it felt to me when I was 9 years of age. And I tend to recommend a wet lip because I know too many great players that are friends of mine and guys that I know and observe that play absolutely marvelous without playing with a dry lip. Actually, my top lip is dry. That's why you see the callus there. And that's always a problem for me. I have to take lots of showers, and because if I get too much callus on the top, you start losing your sensitivity, see? And you won't lose that if you're a wet lip player. But in the final essence, try it both ways. Give both a good shake, especially for the young beginners. If you can make it work with the wet lip, I think it's better. That's one of the things. Another thing is I play off to one side, and that's because I was I had buck teeth when I was a kid, and I never wore braces or anything. But I think from playing, I pushed them back in a little. That old Armstrong method, you know. But what happens is I think that the pressure that you put on yourself, of course, eventually as you learn, oh, I don't have to do that much. I learned a lot of that. A lot of it was self-taught, but because of my teeth coming out, and in those days I had that Terry Thomas look, you know, with the front teeth, a big space between my front two teeth. And so it felt more comfortable to play on one side. Since then, somebody hit me in the mouth about 25 years ago, and so cracked the root of this tooth, so I had my teeth capped, you know. So that's another thing I'd like to just pass on to you, that after this terrible tragedy, you know how many trumpet players say, oh, I don't have my original teeth. Hey, their chops weren't that good in the first place, but suddenly it was God gave me the most perfect embouchure that, you know, he singled me out, you know, and now I have to change my teeth. It's silly, you know. In other words, I play more comfortably. I don't bleed on the inside of my mouth anymore like I did with the Canton band when I had all these jagged edge teeth. It wasn't depression, just bad dentistry, I guess, or something, but I had all kinds of chipped teeth and stuff like that, you know. And I'm much more comfortable now. Let's see what next. Okay. This might be a good time. Yeah, let's get into the. Oh yeah. When I was referring to the stance before, I left one thing out that's important. This is the villain. We all have to use music stands. We all have to learn a very important part of our education, which is reading and sight reading. But for the horn players in particular, you must learn how to adjust the music stand to you. Don't you adjust your body, your embouchure, or anything else. Oh, I'm reading music now. And because that's where the real bad thing happens. And the person that, as I said, when you're thinking and playing consciously, you say, oh yeah, and you stand perfect. but as soon as the new chart comes in, it's, you know, and there is something funny about all of us, like some of us wear glasses, I wear contact lenses, and some of us, of course, still have perfect eyesight, and but it doesn't matter. There's some humanic error in all of us, that, because I do it too. I can see the music perfectly, and I'll be darned, but when it's new and a little bit moving kind of quickly, I'll lean in, you know, and I'll play in correctly, and everything, as though that's going to make me play better if I get my eyeballs closer to what I can already see perfectly. And everybody does it, almost everybody. Okay, so that's one thing. So the music stand really is, particularly for the young player, make sure you're playing the same way as when you're showing off in the bathroom mirror, right? Yeah, because usually, if you look good, you're usually playing the correct way, you know, unless you're getting out there a little. Okay, any questions right now? Anybody want to start the question thing? Because we can go in and out of the questions. Yes, sir.
Talk about your warm-up. What do you do?
Oh, gosh. Okay. I love that because one thing about being the band leader, you don't always get to do the warm-up that you'd like to do. And by that I mean you've got people around you. You've got, whether you're doing interviews, whether you're doing, the guys in my band, like Dan Miller, they have a set thing, and nothing shall interfere. You know, and if you're going to be the leader, you're going to be interfered with because that's part of your game. You know, so I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that's a fact. But once again, I refer to sports a lot, and the reason for that is that we're looking for that coordination that we know we can get. Right? It's there, but so therefore we're warming up. Okay, I read a Arnold Palmer book once that was interesting because it showed. How he was warming up, and then they talked to him for a while, and they said, gee, you seem to be warming up real quick, and this is when he was at the top of his game. And he said, well, yeah, they're working today. And that was the secret. And like you look for your sound first. You want the mouth to feel comfortable. You want to feel your body that you're breathing comfortably. And then when you put air through the horn, you want to hear the sound of the instrument that you like. Remembering that everybody hears their own sound before they ever start to play the instrument. They really do know how they want to sound. Okay? So therefore you'll sound different than me, and I'll sound different than, you know, because that's in our inner ear. Okay? All right, so when we start to warm up, if something is working, that's where the Palmer thing came in. Like, you know, if he starts with his, I don't know, his 5-iron or whatever, and bang, and it's all happening, he's going to put that back in the bag after a few shots, right? And then, because he's going to start easy, of course, you know. And then, but when you get to something that now you try your lip drills and somewhere, you know, and what you do then is you do not smash it. Because that's our ego once again, and you know, it worked yesterday. Damn it, what's the matter? You know, and then you start. You don't fight it. You play with it a little bit. Put the horn down, and go get a Coca-Cola, cup of tea, whatever you want, and come right back to it. But don't just stay there and hammer at it. You know, because now you're using your mind too much. You know. And because you've already known how to do whatever it is you're warming up to, you know. But if you start getting, and then you start the deadly one, oh, this is my off day, you know. And you know, who knows? Maybe you didn't have good breakfast. Maybe you had too much breakfast. Too much wine with dinner last night. Not enough wine, but you know. Okay, so that's really getting silly with yourself, you know. And once again, turn the mind off. Right? Okay? And put the horn down, have a sip, and then go back to it. Yes, sir.
When you was with Kenton's band, how many hours a day did you practice with Kenton's band?
Well, I tell you what, I used to have so many trumpet players get mad at me because you know, I was the youngest guy on that band, and yet I did the featured things. Now, a lot of people thought I was the lead trumpet. I had more great, especially the classical players, going to say, "Boy, you were the greatest lead trumpet Stan Kenton ever had." You know, and I always love to correct them and say, "No, I was the greatest fifth trumpet Stan Kenton ever had." You know, then but in those days they break your parts on the score, and suddenly I wouldn't be playing lead for the last 20 bars, or whenever there was something that required, because a great band leader uses, just like a great football coach, doesn't want the kicker running the ball, but you know. And I said, but wait a minute, I think I got off your original question, which was what?
How many hours?
Oh, yeah.
You practice when you were with Kenton band? Because I have all the Kenton records that you're on.
Oh, well, thank you. Wow, how many hours did I practice? I did so much of my practicing when I was a child by the fact that I was playing in a French-Canadian nightclub from 9 till 2 in the morning when I was 13 years old. And yet my father was a school principal, and my mother was a school teacher, and your parents would get arrested for allowing you to go from 9 till 2 in the morning when you were 13 years of age, you know. But that was on-the-job training, and that was before I won the French Conservatory scholarships and stuff like that, you know. And but I've been playing with boys' bands, and then I've been playing with Oscar Peterson, and I were together with my brother leading the Montreal High School jazz band and stuff like that, you know. But on the Kenton band, how much I practiced, you know, very irregular by that time. Because for one thing, there's no practicing on the band bus.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're on that band bus like forever, and no matter how much you control the enemies, you can only play so much, and this tissue is going to start complaining, you know. And so I would try to get a couple hours. That would make me feel real good, you know, if I could do that, but a lot of times I didn't. And then, and as I've gotten older, things like I used to be able to eat a great big steak. In those days, they told you that was real healthy. You know, steak was big, lots of potatoes, and I would eat that at 8 o'clock. I would sit down to dinner for a 9 o'clock hit and feel best that way. You know, nowadays that's suicide. You know, I'm older. The digestive thing takes longer. And, or maybe I'm just not that wild and crazy anymore that I'll do that and say, let's go, you know. And sometimes knowledge can get in your way in an art form, you know. Somebody finally told me it was a bad idea to eat just before you play. So they convinced me. So now I eat real early, yeah. Did I answer you okay for that? Yeah, in other words, I wasn't, but as a child, I've tremendous amount of playing because I was put in front of a band when I was very young, and when I was 15, I was band leader, and the average age of my band was 35. And so you know I didn't make payroll or do discipline, right? I just felt real lucky to be there playing with them, you know. But that was 7 nights a week. So well, the one other thing is that. And then to play jazz, you could always find a place, quote, after hours that was relatively safe, you know, to go play. Nowadays, if the thing that's really brought this art form just tremendously back, and I mean this internationally, the whole jazz thing, I see the IHJE thing, and the music and jazz educators have pulled this thing into the school systems. And the most healthy thing that's happened with music in the last 25 years has been the total up-leveling of instrumental teaching of music in the school systems. Both here, and it used to be, I'd say, here and in Canada, and now it's worldwide. I mean, I do clinics with interpreters now in Europe and Japan, Asia, and all those places, Brazil, where I thought they spoke Spanish, and I could cheat and get away. No, they speak Portuguese there, and all that kind of stuff. That's what's really happening now. That's very exciting.
One other thing I'd like to ask you is, do you think there's any way to solve the problem of facing some of the kids today in the music field where we could get people like you to come to more clinics when you're in town, do stuff,
Well, I think...
because some of them want to charge so much money, man, that the schools can't afford it.
Uh-huh. Okay, well, I tell you what, you damn well can afford your sports programs.
Yeah, oh, yeah, well, I agree with
And by the way, I'm a big sports fan, so you really understand. I'm not anti-sports at all, but I just think a new piano is more useful than new helmets just because they're stretched. And there has been a lot of that unfairness, so I'll complain on your behalf and demand that this school now take all of their budgets and put it into just kidding. Okay. As you can tell, I come from a school principal father who loved music, by the way. Yes.
With all your years' experience playing the trumpet, do you still find certain pieces difficult or certain passages and pieces difficult?
Every single night. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't know whether you can hear that, but after all the years of playing, do I still find certain passages difficult? And well, it depends on what you're doing. Some of the things that I used to perform as a cornet soloist in the, all the golden things and all the, all those things, I can't play them now. Now, if I want to take a month out and think about my equipment a little bit, and of course I can do it, but also you must remember it's what you do the most. If you quit playing lead trumpet with my band, and you only play with the local symphony, after about a year it might be difficult to just overnight whacking playing lead trumpet on my band. But that doesn't mean you haven't got the ability to do that. It's just you're doing and using the equipment and the musical approach that's best suited to where your music career is taking you, or where you have directed yourself. So therefore, what I'm playing now, and it's fun being the leader. See, when somebody brings something in difficult, you say, that's very un-trumpetistic. Yeah, that means it's pretty hard for me. But if you're the leader, you get to say it's un-trumpetistic. Yes, sir.
What kind of mouthpiece do you use?
I'm glad you asked that. Yeah. That's next. This is one, Dave Monette. I consider him the finest mouthpiece maker. He's also a fine horn maker, of course, and he makes horns for people like William Marcellus and Charlie Sluter from the Boston Symphony, and all those great players, But this is a copy, a basic copy of my rim, and then he's done some magic on the inside here, and so I like the Monette mouthpieces very much, and that's what I use. The kind of mouthpiece that I use is very old-fashioned, and I use very large bore in the mouthpiece. It's a 19, or as he calls it, somewhere between an 18 and a 19 is what this exact one is that I'm playing right now. And the rim is, first of all, flat. If you're looking at it like this, there's no grip on the mouthpiece at all. I believe in working the mouthpiece instead of getting a comfortable grip. Comfortable grips are great for marching bands when you run in at the last moment and you've got a slot right there. But then you don't quite have the manipulation of the mouthpiece if you have too sharp a grip. Feels good when you haven't warmed up. It's harder to have my kind, which is the rim is flat like this with a V cup, right? And then all the edges are rounded, right? Now, I don't mean that the rim is like this. I mean, it's flat, rounded. Yeah, it's as though I'm holding it like this. It's rounded, V cup, and 18 to 19 bore going through it. And one thing I must say, as opposed to horns, mouthpieces are very personal. Once again, I say your first couple of mouthpieces, or certainly your first one, ought to be chosen by a teacher, band director, and all that. But at one point, you've got to go for yourself because we're all different. The mouthpiece that works wonders for me might be just terrible for you. So even though I'd like to tell you that, seeing I get a royalty on these, that no good Christian Texas home should be without them. Send in those checks. Yes, sir.
Can you describe more specifically your jaw action and the upper?
Yeah, just that, could you hear his question all right? Okay. Actually, all it is that on, I'm almost doing this. Of course, I'm exaggerating so you can see it, but yeah, oh yeah, pulling this back. But that one, of course, the airstream is there too, you know. And I mean, I just now closed it up. I didn't mean to do that, but. What that does is just it changes the airstream, right? And if you can make this work for you, you'll notice that you're working with all the places that vocal coaches tell you, particularly the classical ones, and that kind of thing. And that's where the beginning of coordination comes, because you've got to be using the right parts of your body, I don't want to get too Eastern here, or we talk about the chakras and things like that, but those are the energy points of the body, and that's kind of, yes, I got a question. Yeah.
Do you go through a lot of horns, or do you mainly stick to the same horn?
Do I go through a lot of horns, or stick to the main horn? Gosh, you two guys are my kind of guys. This is the MF horn, and it sells for okay. But this is the MF horn, and naturally I love it because I designed it in collaboration with Larry Ramirez from the Holton Company. So naturally I would love it because I picked it up. This is not an endorsement. An endorsement is where they make a trumpet. They pay you a royalty, and therefore you allow them to put your name on it. I worked for years sending horns backwards and forwards to the factory. I originally designed a horn for the British Band Corporation, sometimes called Lucy and Hawks, when I lived in England. And that horn was called the Liberator. And that was the infant, and this is when I came back to the United States from India and Europe and all that. I then was signed by the Pascucci family and designed horns for Holton, or Holton LeBlanc, if you wish. And yeah, so that's it. And it's a 468 bore. It's a big bore. And one thing I'd like to say about the bore of both the mouthpiece and the horn, that's a big bore, and nobody can explain why some guys play a big bore horn and some a small bore horn, and all the mediums. Nor should you get caught up in it. For God's sake, don't get macho. There's one guy called Holton, and said, I'm now playing lead with a top name rock band in their horn line, and so when Ramirez asked him, he said, I want a really custom-made horn. I don't care what it costs. And he said, well, is there any specifications? And he said, yeah, I want to make sure that it's one size bigger than Maynard Ferguson's. And that is really dumb, because there are guys with those great big back sounds and great range that, I don't know how they do it on the equipment that they do. In other words, like, it's what comes out of the end of the horn. It's not, don't get caught up in that thing of how big a bore can you handle. That's not music. Yes. Did I answer your question?
I think that some people are just genetically prone to playing upper register and other players, or is everybody capable of playing?
Okay, in my opinion, everybody is capable of playing in the upper register, yeah. but everybody really doesn't have the, I mean, it's only natural if you're, especially if you get caught on a superhero. You know, like Miles Davis is my main man. I love him. That's where it's really at, and all that kind of thing. Part of your artistic approach to music itself is not the upper register because it wasn't his. You know, and Miles once said to me, because we did an awful lot of shows together, and we were very good friends, and he said, "How the hell did you do that?" You know, and I was so flattered. And then, about a month later, he gave me a harmony lesson, one of the best lessons I ever got. You know, so, you see, we all do all our thing, but eventually your own self comes out. And if that includes your own musical, artistic self, and if that happens to include the upper register, you're going to be right there. But you're going to figure it out because the sound is in your head and you're going for it, you know. But if you want to emulate Kenny Wheeler, if you want to emulate Art Farmer, Chet Baker, these are all guys that have never hardly ever thought about the upper register. They don't think that way artistically, and they're absolutely wonderful players. You know? And so the answer is yes. I think that anybody can do it if they have the if that's one of the directions that they want to take, and make sure whatever you do that it's only one of your musical directions. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Just to kind of follow up on that question, for players that are trying to just expand their register a little bit or give a little bit more strength and security to what they already have, what are some things, particularly maybe elaborate a little bit more on the breathing that will help them get that?
Okay, in the breathing thing, if we had a microphone here, I'd show you a yoga thing that's really interesting, and it has to do with, I'll try to do it here, but it's kind of hard to hear, but if you, as far as breathing, then I want to talk about playing certain things up a minor third. But we'll get, just remind me of that, you know, I'm getting old, I forget. Okay, now I forgot what the first thing was. Okay, most people, if you ask them to inhale, including wind instrument players, to inhale through their nose, take a breath, and say even take a pretty big breath, you know. What you'll hear is this. There's nowhere in my body almost at all, or my lungs, or whatever you want to refer to it as. And you heard that sniffing sound, right? And that's kind of a strange thing because then I have nothing much to offer, you know. But and it's called throat breathing in the same hatha yoga book. And some of them call it sound breathing, some of them call it throat breathing. But it should sound like bellows, you know, like. And that's a great exercise. There's when I do that when the whole band's here, then I show certain kinds of films, but we'll leave that but there's a big difference, and what I've done there is I've frozen this part of my face. By that I mean I will not let my nose wrinkle or anything as I breathe through my nose, and I will concentrate here. That's real easy to do, by the way. Just try it when you're alone, and push out your stomach the first couple of times you do it, because it's a learning tool, you know. And it's a tremendous amount of air that I'm taking in, you know. Without that, you know, when you ever notice if you load up too much, you kind of blow it. You know, you don't want to, there's one point where you're taking in too much air. Okay, did I answer that last one okay? Yes.
Is that what opera singers talk to you?
What's that?
Opera singers. They talk to you.
A lot of what I'm saying, I watch the opera that the singers do. It just happens that because Pavarotti is so absolutely marvelous, you know, that I watch him on occasion, and he's doing all those silly operatic things and like this, you know. And then it comes a big number, and it's the way better, and there he is, you know, and it's not like this. you know, and that's when he's really what we call in the trumpet world nailing it, you know, like the big part of Vesta La Juba or whatever, you know, and he's like, and that's why it's funny how media gets romanticizes some of the things we do, like what they say, all the great opera singers never sing to the people in the expensive seat. We love them because they always sing to the balcony. Well, of course they do, man, because if you know, nobody wants to sing an opera like this, you know, to the front row. And, you know, but it's good PR. Yeah. I love the people in the cheap seats. You know.
You're going to talk about upper minor third.
Okay. How to practice getting into the upper register. Okay, and there's one thing we have to remember, the age of the screech trumpet player only is over. Because there's too many of us now that can do almost what we want to do in the upper register. And not only that, in other words, flat out uncoordinated, and you know, do the same thing on a G as you do. In other words, you're not only out of control, you sound terrible, but there's a reason for and a use for almost every sound. So sometimes to quote scream over the band in an exciting moment is one thing, but you should be able to play that same register, lip trill it, and above all, just like the opera singer, play it romantically. So, because when you play in the upper register romantically, you are totally in control of that register, and what happens in your head is it's normal. You don't say this up. Wow, I'm going to play up to the minute you do that, you're wrong. You should be always sitting, you know, on another step above what you're playing, as far as your mind is. You know, not, I'm going to reach, you know, no, you never reach for a high note. You know, one of the difficult things for me and other high note players is to sound as exciting as Louis Armstrong sounded when he'd play a normal high F at the end of a tune. God, it would sound like, wow, you know, and if we're not careful, it just sounds, you know, because, you know, we've got maybe another, you know, fifth or an octave or however powerful we're feeling that day, you know. And so therefore there's no zing, because, yeah.
When and where was your last big concert?
What?
When and where was your last big concert?
Well, you know, when you've been on the road as long as I have, you won't believe this, but that's one of our hardest questions to answer. Now, where were we last night? Actually, we were in, no, we were outside of Houston playing at Southwest High School. And before that, we were playing the International Association of Jazz Educators convention at the Marriott Complex in Houston.
San Antonio.
Oh, sorry, San Antonio. See what I mean? Yeah. Okay, where was I? Just finishing up on something else.
Minor third.
What's that?
Minor third.
Oh, yeah, okay, so therefore, pick a romantic tune that you yourself like. It doesn't matter, and it's got to be a tune that's ordinary to you. And you've always played it in one specific key, you know. But you're going to never allow yourself to sound like a high note trumpet player. The minute you do, stop. You know, you want to feel like. That's the key, that's the Stardust to Holy Carmichael, and that's the key it was written in. Now, instead of trying to see, that's how high I can play today, because then you'll be getting into that screech thing again, you know, with out of control. Great sound sometimes, but not very often. All right, so put it up a major third, but you do not want any more intensity to come through the horn. Stop as soon as you get tired, because that's when you'll get that blatant sound, that unromantic sound. So, and or, you know, I'm putting it up a minor third. You can put it up a half a tone at a time, a tone, whatever suits you, you know. So instead of and use the vibrato, whether it's hand or I have a lip vibrato. So that's another subject, and that seems to be an actual thing, whatever works for you. But as long as you're using that vibrato, you'll find you can't overuse your pressure, because the you know, and it's a great key to keeping away from pressing too hard. And then try to play softer, and all that still staying in a slightly higher key until that becomes average in your head and your body and everything else that you don't want to think about. That it gets used to it, right? Right. And playing romantically, I find more effective for that than long tones. Right? Long tones are very difficult. They're still good. They drive me crazy, but I know them better. Yeah. Yes.
I think you've got a great multidisciplinary approach to the instrument. I think you've got a great multidisciplinary approach to the instrument. It seems to me you've taken something from practically every good thing in music to play. You've done it for so many years. About 20 years ago, I saw you in Louisiana. And it seemed to me that you not only had a masterful ability to breathe in, but the release was really important to you. Would you say just a word about the power that you put behind the release of the explosion of air for the instrument?
Oh yeah, I have to be careful about that, because if I'm playing something where I want to sound a little more straight, you don't want that kind of a release if it's what I think you're talking about. You know, like this. That's exciting in its place, you know. But other times, I wouldn't want to do it for some of the symphony conductors I know. You are out of here. You know?
I'm really thinking more about the release from your lungs of the air. It seems to me like you have extreme control over the power of the air stream.
I probably do, but you know, one of the things was that I idolized all the great trumpet players when I was very young. My mother was very disappointed. She wanted me to be the next Isaac Stern, and piano and violin from the age of 4. But at the age of 9, I heard a cornet player, and that was it. You know, and my folks had a good sense of humor, thanks to God, and they said, all right, you know, so they went out and bought a trumpet for me and a saxophone for my brother, you know. And that's where I got started on the wind instruments. But I think getting so many good breaks while I was young, which now I see a lot of that same thing happening in the music educational field, with the chance to play with other young people while you're in your early development. And one thing I did is I imitated everybody. Everybody I could hear, all the Duke Ellington guys, and of course the Louis Armstrongs. It was a little bit too early at the very beginning, of course, for Dizzy and Miles and that type of thing, but it was Roy Eldridge, Bunny Berrigan, and for 7 years in a row, almost every night, I played and sang I Can't Get Started With You, just like a transcribed from the old Bunny Berrigan thing and stuff like that. Well, that meant that I was playing high Fs when I was 13. And of course, I would be, you see, it's the mind game. So when you start playing those acts when you're 13, hey, you're kissing your own hand at that age. You know you're dynamite when you're 13, right, guys? Okay, and it's called No Fear. And as long as you put together with that no fear of missing, most of the time you won't miss. And then when you do miss, that's the mind game right there. They just got to say, that was my best shot, and just think of Reggie Jackson and, the greatest home run hitter of all time with the worst batting average, And so you don't worry about it. Just pick up the bat again and go up to the plate, Get your horn education, go to work, And, but never, we say karma, but never carry a scorecard on yourself. That's the thing, And there's a Buddhist thing that's lovely about the middle path, and that is, so when you were just dynamite, just relax, and the same thing when you step all over yourself, just relax and smile, And in both cases, hopefully you gave it your best shot, And it's kind of a good philosophy, and it's particularly good for lead players because we can't cover it up. Well, I don't care what kind of orchestra work, jazz band. When you're playing, improvising a jazz solo, a lot of little tricks you can get away with. Did he really mean it? But such as I mentioned earlier. But the guys in the symphony, they got to own up. They got to take care of business exactly that way. Somebody up front knows what you're supposed to play. Okay.
Are there any simple tips or basic rules to playing higher or coming faster?
Okay, coming faster is just a thing of practice, just like learning your F sharp scale just a little bit slower than you did your C scale, talking trumpet, and things like that. And the tonguing thing. Because we don't have an awful lot of time left to really jump into a whole thing on tonguing, but you'll discover that as opposed to a guy who's predominantly a great classical player, I stick that old tongue right in the mouthpiece, because most of the time, no, I'm not telling you to do that, but that's because most of my playing is towards the power thing, towards the stamina, and towards playing with the big full sound, When I did my 4 performances with the New York Philharmonic and Bernstein was conducting, and I was doing the Titans thing, and I was featured with him, and Bagliano was the principal trumpet with the thing. And after the intro, Bernstein cut it off and looked back at me, and I had the solo thing in the intro, and he said, Mr. Ferguson, I believe that's mezzo forte. And Bagliano said, excuse me, maestro, that is his mezzo. And Bernstein had a marvelous sense of humor. He also knew it was the truth. Yes. Would I mind improvising a jazz solo? No, let's see how much time I got left, though. Just 1 second. Now, I will do something like that. Sure. Oh yeah, I just wanted to let you know that we're at Rockefeller's tonight. I think I've covered a lot of things, and of course I want to thank band director over here and great trumpet player here, Bob O'Neill, very much. Yes, sir. Don't touch your dinner. And let me see. How's our time going, Ed?
5.
What's that?
We need to go on 5.
Okay. All right. So let me field one more question then. Who's got it? Anybody got a question you want?
Over here.
Yes.
Do you ever play your superphone?
You know what? The superphone is an instrument that I really love, and I mentioned earlier about my teeth are capped now, And this was oddly enough, was the tooth I had a lot of problems with, and I don't have any more, with this cap. And great humorous story of playing my Superbone in England, and this cap flew right out of my mouth, and actually hit a lady in the front row. And this is a true story that only the British have that sense of humor. She never laughed or anything. She just leaned down and looked at it, and picked it up and calmly walked up to the mantel and said, "I believe this belongs to you." Okay, so I'm now getting back to my bigger mouthpiece instruments because I love playing them.
Yeah, I was wondering, just, do you know like how, like some of these low brass instruments, like, do you know if there's any future for them as far as like playing high note stuff? Because like, I can play like high F's and G's like above the total.
In your, you mean on your trombone?
Baritone.
On baritone. The use of the upper register? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Where's the symphony guys here? These guys back there? Where are you guys?
Oh, here you go.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Who's that great tuba player that just...
Jacobs, Arnold Jacobs?
Yeah, just
Arnie Jacobs?
outrageous. Yeah, I think he can play as high as I can. You know, and he's playing the tuba, and he sounds wonderful when he does it. Yeah. You know, so if you have a natural inclination for that, as long as you don't make that's my thing. You know, because they're going to do that to you anyway. You've just got to make sure you do all the other things too. You know, and so you don't get hung up on and you catch yourself seeing how small a mouthpiece you can get, and the fact that I can't play a middle B flat is not important, because you know, but just learn the whole thing. I think I'm just about running out of time, and I just want to say one thing. I was actually to improvise something, and you know, if you're doing a ballad like. You want to be able to be a jazz player, you've got to listen just as much as all the classical players, and don't get hung up on one superhero, whether it's Miles Dizzy, whether it's Wayton, whether it's Doug Versus, Doug Versus, and any of the great players. Listen to all of them so that you have this great chance to end up sounding like yourself. The great joy is to sound like yourself. And then a lot of people will say, hey, how come you don't play more like... Just ignore that. All right? Play like yourself, you know. And it'll come to you automatically how you want to sound, how you want to play. I really enjoyed talking to you very much. I have dinner and an early show at Rockefeller, so I do thank you very, very much, and I enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, LA.